We are inching closer to the start of the 89th legislative session. A record number of bills, over 1,500, were filed on day one of pre-filing. Accordingly, the debate on bills can get overlooked, even on critical legislation. That's why we've asked legislators to come to TPPF to discuss their bills to ensure you are on top of the most important issues making their way through the Texas Capitol. This is the layout. I'm Jose Melendez, Campaign Director of TPPF's Taxpayer Protection Project. Today we're discussing House Bill 229 with Representative Ellen Troxclair from House District 19. Representative Troxclair, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, today we're going to be talking about HB 229, which amends the government code to define biological sexes in Texas. Tell us about what sparked the need for this bill.
Well, unfortunately, here we are at the end of 2024, and something that we have known to be true for thousands of years, which is what is the difference between a man and a woman, has somehow escaped some people's ability to define. Of course, as a woman, I know that you can't have private spaces, you can't have women's rights if you don't have a definition of what that is. And in government code, there are plenty of specific protections or specific benefits that are reserved for women, and yet we still lack a definition of it. I filed this bill last year. Unfortunately, it did not get a hearing, but this year it is the very first bill that I have filed, and I am excited and determined to make sure that Texas, once and for all, can answer that question truthfully and factually.
So take us through this bill. How does it work?
It basically just says here, in biological terms, here's what a woman is, here's what a man is, here's what a boy and a girl is. And this is important for so many reasons. But one of the things that really brought this to be a passion issue for me is when I met with Riley Gaines 2 years ago now. And she said, Ellen, it wasn't just that I had to compete against a biological man who, I had no chance of beating because of things that were outside of my control. It wasn't just the hours, the days, the years, the months that I put into training, the Saturdays that I've given up, everything that I've sacrificed to be at the top of my game in swimming, in collegiate swimming. It was the fact that I was forced to undress in front of an intact male in my dressing room, and we were forced to undress in front of him. And I assumed that my coaches would stand up for me, that the parents would stand up for us, that the adults in the room in this conversation would stand up for us, and no one did. And sitting across from a 23-year-old woman and hearing that kind of testimony as a mom of two girls myself, it really just broke my heart of how have we let this get so far that this young woman had to sit here and tell me that what should have been a private protected space, a women's locker room where they were dressing and undressing, was no longer private or protected. And in fact, if she dared to speak out against it, she was called all kinds of names and threatened her career, threatened her collegiate graduation, and so on and so forth. And so at some point, we have to be willing to get back to what is reality. I'm more than happy to be a spokesperson on behalf of all women and the rights that we've worked so hard for.
So how will the lives of Texans be impacted once this bill is passed and implemented?
Yeah. So, going forward, you're either a boy or a girl at birth. That is reflected properly on your birth certificate, on government documents. This is important for statistics tracking of things like, violence against women. How often does that happen? Well, that can't be accurately tracked if there's not accurate gender on government documents. But the reality, the bigger picture is that our girls would now be protected in those private spaces, that my mom could look at me and know that the rights that she and her mom had fought for, that we understood that those were at risk when we can't define what it means to be a woman. And And I think even more than that, there is something deeper that I'm not sure I can accurately fully describe. But if we are going to look at each other and say, you know what, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 anymore, 1 + 1 is going to equal 3. If we are going to say, you know what, the sky is not blue anymore, we're just going to say that the sky is green from now on, and you're a bigot if you disagree. If we cannot agree on fundamental truths of what the difference is between a man and a woman, then we can no longer talk to each other on similar terms. There's something basic about being able to agree on basic starting points that allows us to interact with each other, and be better policymakers, and be in humanity in a way that makes sense together. And so we are just trying to right what has gone so wrong. And it's sad that, something as crazy as defining what a woman is controversial. But it's more than just words on paper. It is what defines truth. It is part of what defines truth. And we have to get back to a place where we can recognize and define what is true, no matter what somebody else tries to say it is.
So some people tell us that it's not the proper role of government to define biological sex. How do you respond to that?
I can't imagine there being any relevant argument against that. I mean, obviously, defining biological sex is on all of our government documents that are required for a long list of things. And so if we're going to do that truthfully, we're going to do that accurately. This is not a trick question. Men and women are different. We know they're different. They're biologically different, and we should just be truthful about that. And our daughters are going to be better off for it, because I cannot imagine looking my girls in the eye and telling them, a bedtime story. Well, one time, women didn't have the right to vote. Well, we fought for the right to vote. And at one time, women didn't have private protected spaces, and your ancestors fought for those rights. And then one time, some super woke people showed up and decided that should not be true and erased all of our protections. And therefore, now you have to go play sports, or you have to share a private locker room and dress in front of men. And your mom sat by and did nothing. Like, this is not the future that we want for our kids. And so I know that one day they will be grateful for the work that we're putting in now to make sure that their rights are fully protected.
What kind of feedback have you received since filing the bill?
Oh, overwhelmingly positive feedback. I mean, I think we've seen, even in this last election, the overwhelming outpouring of people just tired of being gaslit by this woke nonsense. It just feels like every day you wake up and there's another news article where you're living in the emperor's new clothes, where it's like, surely people don't actually believe this stuff. Like, I'm not a cisgender woman. What does that mean? I'm just a woman. Like, you don't have to, there's no prefix required, right? And so I think that there was a strong message, whether you're, right, left, or somewhere in between. We want to get back to sanity. We want to get back to truth. And this has just been, regardless of what side of the aisle, it's common sense. And I hope that we can expedite its passage this legislative session when it begins in January. And I do want to give a shout out to Riley Gaines, who has absolutely had my back, or I've had hers either way around. We've been arm in arm on this since day one. And so I know she'll be back at the Capitol advocating for its passage. And for the sake of all our girls, I hope we get it done.
Absolutely. Well, Representative Troxclair, thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.